I have two powerful quotes for you, and here are those. You can't enjoy wealth if you are not in good health. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Hi, I'm Prem Sai, a life coach. I'm very excited to invite Dr. Reema Das on Enhanced Life Skill platform, Be My Guest series. Dr. Reema Das is a consulting preventive cardiologist and a Panchakarma specialist. She has done her fellowship in preventive cardiology and cardiac rehabilitation. She has done her post-graduation diploma in emergency and medical services and MBA in healthcare administration. Dr. Reema comes from both clinical and a management background. Over the last 5 years of her career, she has played an integral part in her organization, implementing her experience in both Indian and US healthcare. She truly believes in prevention is better than cure and has a vision to create awareness about heart disease and ways to prevent them with healthy lifestyle, which is the need of the hour today because of the pandemic. So, hi, Dr. Reema. Welcome to the Enhanced Life Skill platform. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you. I'm well. I hope everyone is doing well in this hard times of the COVID-19. And thank you for this introduction and calling me on this platform.
We are glad to invite you, Dr. Reema, because our viewers definitely in this pandemic situation, everybody is facing a lot of health issues these days, and I think in this pandemic time, people have also put on a lot of weight, and apart that, there are also a lot of people are talking about that the second pandemic would be the mental health, right? So there are many things, and I think people like you who are in the vision of creating this awareness, you're doing a great job. So coming back to the first question that for you is, as you are a Panchakarma specialist, what does Panchakarma mean? Like what is Panchakarma? Because I have seen many people, they don't understand the word Panchakarma, and what does a Panchakarma specialist do?
Okay. So, Panchakarma in Ayurveda is a combination of 5 karmas. It's the 5 procedures, which includes first is as a Basti karma, in which enema with some medications is administered inside the body. Second comes as Vaman, which means emesis, which is induced vomiting, through which few doshas, as Ayurveda says that those doshas create the diseases. Those are thrown out of the body. The
Toxins.
next
You
is
mean to say?
Virechon, which
Okay.
means
You mean toxins? Dosha means toxins, right?
the toxins. Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay.
The toxins are thrown out of the body because those are the toxins which create diseases.
Okay.
The third one, which I was saying, was Virechon, which means purgation, means induced defecation, whatever doshas are there in the stomach, we just remove them. And the last two are, one is Nasya, in which the medications is given through the nose, the nostrils. And the last one is Raktamokshan, in which it comes the leech therapy or the cupping therapy, in which the diseases that are caused due to impurified blood, the blood is taken out of the body through leech therapies or cupping therapies. So all these 5 karmas together are tagged as Panchakarma in Ayurveda.
Okay, so I mean, it's very technical to understand, because you have shared, like you by explaining that you used many, such kind of words, which is very difficult to understand.
Correct.
So basically, in a layman language, what exactly it is? Is it about the whole process of, removing the toxins, or how do you define, just in a layman language where people don't understand about Panchakarma?
Correct. So Panchakarma is basically, it can be classified into 2 ways. Like, one is Panchakarma is not only as a cure. It can be there as a prevention as well. Like every day we clean our house, right? The same way it can be, it's like the cleaning of the body through various ways. Like when I'm talking about vomiting, that means we throw the substances out of our body through our mouth. When I talk about induced defecation, so these are all the ways from which the toxins can be thrown out of the body. It's the cleaning of the body.
Okay, so can it be done at home itself, or it has to be done under somebody's, doctors like you, under your provision, like under your, you monitor, or doctors like you can monitor, and in front of them only people has to do. So is there a way that we can do it at home itself?
Okay, so to start with, you will have to consult a doctor, a Panchakarma specialist to know which Panchakarma. You can't do all the five at one time.
Okay.
It will be dependent on your symptoms. It will be dependent what you're trying to achieve. If it is done for curative purposes, it will be dependent on what is the problem. So
Mhm.
depending on that, a detailed history taking, a detailed your diet, your lifestyle, everything will be studied by a Panchakarma specialist and will be suggesting now this karma will be perfect for you, and then you can do it under their supervision. Going forward for maintenance kind of thing, the
Hmm.
Panchakarma specialist can give you maybe some medication, some kadhas, or some tips which in the long run you can practice at home. But to start with, you will have to visit a Panchakarma specialist to identify what is the karma that would suit you. It's not
Oh,
like all one shoe that will fit to all.
okay.
So it's curated depending upon your body structure and everything.
Mhm. So I basically, I was very curious about the specialization that you have done. It's like, you are an Ayurveda doctor. At the same time, you have also done some
Correct.
preventive cardiologists, those kind of courses
Correct.
and certifications. And you work with Indian clients as well, and patients and patients from abroad, outside India. So how is this combination, combination of this and that? How does it work? And I mean, yeah, I'm really glad to understand that this kind of combination is possible these days, and people who want to go into this field can blend these two together, and
Right.
think about this kind of career. So that's really great about it. So in that, coming to that point, and extending the question of mine is, what does a preventive cardiologist do? I mean, being a Ayurvedic doctor and a preventive
Hmm.
cardiologist, how does it help in? I mean, what does a preventive cardiologist do, and how is it different from an Ayurvedic doctor approach and perspective?
So basically, I was very into cardiology thing. It always fascinated me in my medical college. So what I thought of is, nowadays cardiac disease has become very common.
Very
Like
true.
you get a cardiac patient almost at every house or every alternate house. So is there anything like during my medical days, during my internship, I've seen patients, those undergo bypass surgeries, those undergo stent therapies, and are back to track one in 5 or 10 days down the line.
Mm.
So the thought process behind this was, is there something we can cure? Rather than cure, we can prevent or at least prolong doing this. If someone is getting a cardiac disease at the age of 40 or 50, maybe we can prolong it. And if you can see, initially was assumed that cardiac disease is something which happens after 50.
Yeah, yeah,
Now that
yeah.
has almost came down to 30, and it is also coming down to 20s. I see patients in their early 20s or late 20s with any cardiac elements. So that was the thought process. And while talking about preventive cardiology as a field, what the preventive cardiologists especially do is the prevention part. The main motive of it is to prevent. Now, who all are the person to prevent to? Like the person who are diagnosed with cardiac disease at a very early stage, like 10%, 20% blockage.
Mm.
Given the current scenario, if you see, there's no treatment given to 10 or 20% except for few medications, and to wait till the time the patient reach to 70-80% blockage, and we can go ahead with stent therapy or the bypass therapies. So basically these people are the main people we should treat with. And at least if they are leading to 70 to 80% in 5 years, maybe we can prolong it to 15 years or 20 years. That would affect their quality of life. So
Absolutely.
these are the patients that preventive cardiology treat. The second group of people which are treated are those are not yet been diagnosed with a cardiac disease but have risk factors. When I say risk factors, this includes like people who already have hypertension, like blood pressures, or the patient who are diabetic, or the patient who have obese, like have excess weight, overweight people. So these people, when you have a combination of all these diseases, they can high chance to get a cardiac disease. So we can just treat them to reduce their possibility of getting a cardiac disease. And also the people, the childrens of people who have got cardiac diseases, like people who get cardiac diseases in very early, in their 30s, or maybe less than at 45 years of age, their children are also prone high for probability of getting a cardiac disease. So even for them, they need to visit a preventive cardiologist to know what they can do. It's basically a lifestyle that they need
Okay.
to change. It's the diet and everything.
Okay, okay, great. So, I mean, really, you have explained it very, in a very elaborated way. So, I mean, it is really easily understandable. So, Dr. Rima, tell me one thing. Does who recognizes? I mean, WHO recognizes Ayurveda as one of the way of treatment? Because I've seen, I myself follow Ayurveda concept and all that. It's been 6, 7 years after I you can say that few people have the tendency to suffer and then learn a lesson. So I think I was one of that category.
Correct.
So I, as even if I talk about my life, it's like I didn't pay attention at the right time, and that's the reason I fell into the zone of messing up my lifestyle and having that disc prolapse and all that. So from then from that particular position, from being a having a disc prolapse condition, coming to becoming a yoga practitioner, it was a long journey and it was not that easy. So it was like I gave my 5, 6 years to become who I am today. So here from here and in the journey of this going to a Ayurvedic doctor and discussing about this that I would look for another option of treatment when this allopathy doctor said that you think about to become a life coach, or maybe to become a corporate trainer, because it needs a 8 hours of standing, all that. So there I've seen people that Ayurveda, do you think it is going to work? Does is it I mean kind of is it authentic or something of that sort? So in that case, that's that one question that comes to my mind is, does WHO recognizes Ayurveda as one of the way of treatment? Because Ayurveda has been our ancient method of treatment. It is a very holistic way of treatment, and I'm one of the example, and there will be many examples that because of this holistic approach, for which I have come from that particular, I have overcome that particular challenges and have come to a state that I'm leading my life. Rather I understood the value of life now, and living my taking each one day at a time and living it to the fullest. So what do you like? How do you put it? Like, if WHO recognizes Ayurveda?
I'm glad that you asked this question, because I think many of them have the same question
Yes.
to this. And sadly, as you said, like people nowadays approach Ayurveda, at least now or maybe 5 years ago, they approach Ayurveda only when as a last option. When you
Yes.
don't have anything and you're losing hope, you don't want to go for or you're just tired of taking some medication. Part of Ayurveda was ignored for a very long time. So that is one point. And talking about WHO, yes, WHO recognizes Ayurveda. Rather, in the recent time, WHO has come across various programs for the global recognition of Ayurveda.
Wow.
So if you search, there are various programs for standardization purposes, for propaganda of Ayurvedic medications, as well as awareness. So WHO is themselves creating awareness in the globally about Ayurveda as one of the treatments which has a very first thing of prevention. If you see Ayurveda, it has 80% of Ayurveda text says about prevention. Better to prevent rather than cure. So the 20% only goes into cure for the cure medications, but the rest is is all about the prevention, and that is what the propaganda of WHO is currently.
Excellent. I mean, it is really great to know about
So,
this.
and when you talk about, yes, and sadly, as you said, it's a very traditional way of which was originated in India. But we Indians sometimes accept things when it goes to Western. When Western people accepts it, only then the Indian people we accept them. So
Yes.
it's somewhere the yoga as well. It originated in India. However, we accepted it only after the Western people accepted it, or maybe modified it to aerobics or something, and then they accepted yoga, only then we accepted it. But of course, no one should forget that it originated from India.
Well said, Dr. Rima. And
So the WHO accepts it.
Yeah. So, I mean, really glad to know that WHO is
Yeah, so the last line was,
entering into the zone of making it a global thing for no to create that awareness about Ayurveda and what the benefit of its holistic approach of treating human beings. And and these days, like one more thing which I have noticed, like I think last year when we were in the lockdown period, I was
correct.
just, I went to the WHO website and I've seen, I was really surprised to see very few things which I didn't expect to see there is there are self-awareness exercises with an audio. So, because of this pandemic and it would help people, those who are, kind of, having that suffering of to be locked, in their own house. So, and then the mental trauma or maybe the mental fluctuations that they are going through. So there were very self-awareness exercises. I was not expecting this kind of initiative, done by WHS, but I saw a lot of mindfulness exercises with guided meditation, and all those links were there in WHS. So glad to know that WHO is also taking initiative to create that awareness of Ayurveda in this world. So how aware people are to accept and look for Ayurvedic treatment? I mean, if you talk about just India, then how aware people are to accept this? I mean, because you are in that field and you are treating people. What do you see the difference
talking
within last
about
5 years?
India, okay. So there has been a difference in the 5 years, but I think India has still a way to go. The reason I say this is there is still a lot of awareness to be created about health. I mean, we don't turn up to the doctor until something goes wrong. Rather than that, also, when you suffer from something, rather than going to a doctor, the first person to approach is a medical shop. I mean, they trust on over the counter medications,
Yes.
and when that is not able to cure, only then we reach out to the doctor.
True.
So, before creating awareness about Ayurveda, the first thing is to create awareness about health. No matter which doctor you visit, you should make your health a priority first. I mean, and in India, we still don't have a concept of, annual health checkups. As you know, I've been associated with US healthcare as well. So US healthcare has annual health checkups for maybe every specialty. May it be cardio, may it be some ortho specialist or anything. But in India, forget about specialty. We don't really go to our family physicians also to give a visit. Like, no, I'm fine. I'm just here to do some checkups or something. So the first awareness that needs to be created is about health. You should take your health as a priority. Do some testings that needs to be done, and see. I know there's the funny part is I think people in India feel that if we go to a doctor or do some test, something will come up. I don't know, but that's a simple line I've heard. But they need to understand, even if they don't do the testing, the thing is the disease or anything, it's still inside you. If you get yourself tested, at least you will be aware and then you can treat it. If you don't get tested, maybe you can know about it only at the last stage or some stages where you can't even treat it. So the first priority should be give yourself a priority. The way you do your car servicing every year, the way you clean your houses every Diwali, make it a habit. Maybe on your birthdays, maybe on your anniversaries, gifting each other, you can go for a health checkup together. Go treat yourself. I mean, treat the way we treat ourselves with food, the same way we should treat ourselves going for a health checkup or something. So that's the main priority. It's not about, I would say, visit only Ayurvedic doctor or something. Go whichever doctor you want to, but at least go and get yourself tested. Take care of yourself. Be aware of your health, because as the first quote you said, the health is the utmost priority. If you're healthy, you can enjoy the rest of the things in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very well said. I mean, yeah, you just touched upon those pain points where we think like that, right? कि क्या हुआ है मुझे क्यों जाऊँ,
Yeah,
that kind of attitude. Yeah, absolutely. And then one fine day, it just goes out of our hand, if we get something in our reports. Very, very. I mean, the
correct.
truly said, I would say. So, how do you
And to
approach?
highlight one point,
Yeah, go ahead.
hello. Yeah,
Yeah.
just to highlight one point, I have also seen people, they do the test, and when everything is normal, they're not happy because, we spend it so much money, but everything came out to be normal. So next time I won't do it. That's not how it works, I think. I think, we are happy when we go for a car servicing or we do something else and things are all well. So I think that should be the same thing for every one of us. Just because your reports are normal, it's not that the next time you don't do any testing, because last time it was normal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a different perspective. I think you might have experienced that. That's the reason you have just,
Yeah,
spoke about this. Correct.
correct, correct.
So Dr. Reema, what sort of treatment approach do you follow? I mean, how do you diagnose if a patient comes to you?
Okay. So at now this point of time, I think, as I said, people are approaching to Ayurveda, but as a second option or maybe as a last option. So most of the time, people come diagnosed. These are my reports, and I have been advised a surgery, or I've been on these medications. So what next to do? However, the treatment approach, when a new patient comes with some symptoms, or else just for a preventive purposes, the first thing that is followed is a complete history taking and a complete understanding of their lifestyle, from the food they eat to the lifestyle they
Oh,
are leading. I mean, each and everything affects your heart, affects your body. So we need to understand that, we need to identify things which we can change in a lifestyle, and also identify things which maybe are not changeable, like a person who is doing a night shift. We can't just ask a person to, just leave. You can't do a night shift.
yeah,
Sometimes it's not possible for everyone.
right.
So just need to understand what are, changeable factors which can be worked upon, and which are the factors which we can't change. So we'll have to think of something else. So complete history taking and understanding of a person is the first thing that we do. The second is going for some tests. May that be some blood test or some reports that are needed to see what is the condition, what is the current status of the condition, and what are we trying to achieve. The next is depending upon the reports as well as the history taking. It could be in the very initial stages of a preventive purposes. It could be a complete lifestyle changes or some Ayurvedic medications. I try to keep the medications as minimal as possible, because no one likes taking medicines, right? So if we can do it with lifestyle changes, that's the best approach. And some panchakarma therapies at times, maybe once in a year, or to repeat it once in 2 years, or it can be a one time thing as well. So depending upon the patient, these are the treatment protocols that are followed.
Okay. So, and have you experienced, such kind of patient wherein the patient would be also taking Western medicine and also, have come to you for an Ayurvedic approach of treatment? So it's like, how does integrating Ayurveda and Western medicine or treatment style helps? Or does it help or it doesn't help?
Okay. So most of the patient, I think, who approaches, I would say 90% of them are already on some Western or modern allopathy medication, and it do help. So just for me, I would say it's always about the patient. It's never about the pathy. You should do whatever will help the patient. So in this, there's no contraindications to it. It surely helps. So when a patient comes, if the patient is already on some medications, it's not that we directly stop allopathy medications. We just, as I said, we do a complete analysis of it. We go with some treatments, and eventually we try to taper the medications of allopathy as well as later the Ayurvedic medications as well, and try to keep it as minimal as possible. Yes, but there are some medications which cannot be stopped. So the patient had to take both the medications, like the allopathy medication as well as Ayurvedic medications, and that won't. It's not contraindicated. It don't have any side effects. It is not going to affect. This taking Ayurvedic medication along with allopathy medication can create some problems or something. I think that's the most question that everyone asks, is it fine, can I take this medication together? Yes, that's fine, but yeah, you should take it with proper guidance and for the period of time that is advised to you.
Okay.
I've seen patients that they have advised to take it for maybe a month, and then they continue it for 3 months saying that, oh yeah, I'm feeling better with this medication, so let me continue. So that shouldn't be done for any medications, may it be Ayurvedic as or allopathy. But yeah, under proper guidance, both the medications can be taken together. There's absolutely no contraindications to it.
Okay. And how do you deal with the client who is a little doubtful about, I mean, at times what happens just to have a trial with an Ayurvedic doctor, just to, let me go and see what she or he would like to tell me. So with this mindset, if somebody comes, I mean, medicine लेना कि नहीं लेना बाद में सोचेंगे, yeah, my neighbor was insisting me to go and meet. So मैं थोड़ा सा जाके, let me meet
Correct.
someone. So in this kind of mindset, like how do you deal with these kind of patients who are a little doubtful about the evidence of, the base of Ayurvedic treatment? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, there have been patients who are, doubtful about this thing. So there are two ways. I mean, few, they actually want an evidence that how it works, does it work or it don't work. So for them, if someone believes in, world recognitions, are there any trials done or something? So in those perspectives, I just suggest them, there are websites, as I can say, CCRA, the Central Council of Ayurvedic Research. They have many papers which are published, like in Asian journals. There's a medical journal called Lancet, which is worldwide accepted. So there are Ayurvedic papers which have been published. See, given today's 21st century, people are very tech savvy. So they know sometimes they want the evidence based. So these are the few, world recognized evidences, as well as there are some patient testimonies for me as well. These patients were treated. And there's one thing that would I definitely do is, if someone is not willing to take a medication, you can't force someone, you have to take it. Let them get the belief first. I think if you don't believe in something, even the best medication won't work. So, let's have a talk. Let's have a talk. If they want to just, try it, it's fine. I just suggest them few things, few lifestyle things that they can practice at home, few things that they can do at their, at their kitchen itself. So just try with those things. If you feel there's some difference, if you gain some confidence and you're willing to take the medication, then surely I'll go ahead and we can do the medications or panchakarma and whatever is necessary. But I think first the patient should believe in those things, and only then there's a point to go ahead and do the treatment, because anything done half-heartedly don't work. I mean, it doesn't. Yeah.
Any such experiences?
So that's the approach, I think.
Yeah, any such experiences of any patient from your past experiences who had come with this kind of mindset, and you have moved from a point A to point B towards a healthy lifestyle, and now he or she is doing great and fine? If you would like to share.
Yeah, definitely. So I had this one patient. The first point which I said, I can't reveal the name for the privacy purposes, but this patient, she was really doubtful about these things. She wanted the way I said. I told her about the website first. I mean, she was very tech savvy. She was working in a very nice position in a corporate, and she wanted some evidence based. So I told her the website. So the very first day we just had a general conversation, and I just told her about these journals, these websites. And she went. Then she took an appointment after 2 or couple of days. Then she was back saying, yeah, I went through some of the journals, and I gained some confidence, but still I'm not sure whether I should take it or I should not take it. So we went ahead with only, some lifestyle changes, some yoga, or some walking and some household stuffs. She did it for, I guess, a month or so. And then she returned saying, these things actually helped me. These were very small things that I have done. So then the next, it took us almost, 3 months months to start her treatment, not sure whether this is going to help, and to do something, we have excuses, we have time constraints, we have everything. So it took, almost 3 months to start the treatment. We started the treatment, and I think in the next 6 to 8 months, the one thing is, uh, if the disease has developed inside you over years, so it will take at least some time, at least some months to get cured. It can't be treated, overnight, and you are just fine the other day. So it needs some dedication from your part as well. It's not always the doctors. It's not just, when we are going for a lifestyle change, it is never like you just take this pill. It has to be an overall transformation.
True.
So over this, I think over past 6 to 8 years, she is now actively following Ayurveda, and even, uh, you know, telling this to their friends, their colleagues, and everything, that it has changed my life. Maybe you should try. I think she's still in contact. She's doing well. So anything that comes up, she's like, yeah, can I forward it to my friends? I know this really helps. And this is one example. There are few more. The reason I remember this was because she was that one person who was never willing to, even start the treatment. She was always having a doubt. So that was one of the testimony I think
Excellent.
I can share.
Yeah. So excellent, Dr. Reema. I mean, it's really great that to be a part of somebody's lifestyle, to change it and have that create that transformation is really a great thing.
Correct.
I'm sure. So, so Dr. Reema, tell me one thing. In such a scenario, it happens like you have started the treatment with the patient, and then at one point of time you might have felt that. It needs a Western, intervention, Western medicine intervention or something of that sort.
Correct.
So, so at what point would you insist that the patients should go to also integrate with the Western, intervention of medications or maybe a surgery or something of that sort, and then continue with the Ayurveda? So, has it happened ever with any of the patient in your experience?
Yeah, yes, it can have happen. So to talk about this, I also work closely with few of the cardiologists as well. I mean, as and when needed. Now, if we are working, following a healthy lifestyle, we also assess the patient depending upon, in a 3 months or a 6 months gap, depending on the severity. So maybe in the next report, if something comes up, the things are not reducing or whatever the reason, or the patient develops some symptoms which are maybe somewhat severe, and we need a Western medication or surgery or hospitalization, and anything it can be. So I think the point where we need Western intervention would be in case any complication arises from the disease. I mean, when we start treating a patient, maybe already has a blockage of 40-50%, and in an assessment 3 months down the line, it's still increasing. There's a possibility sometime that the lifestyle modifications were not strictly followed, or if we started the treatment and there was a sudden lockdown, so there was not possibility that you can't go out for walks. There was some unhealthy stuff, food habits, or the diet was affected. So there can be a possibility. Yeah, there have been a couple of times where maybe the patient developed some other symptoms that worsened the existing complaint and required an hospitalization. There could be a possibility. So in that case, in the reassessment, or if the patient start experiencing any complications, we do advise the patient to get admitted, or maybe we can assist the patient with talking to the cardiologist and the treatment protocols and everything, and accordingly can take forward from there. So when I talk about cardiac rehabilitation, it also depends upon the post surgical things that happens. Like the patient gets admitted and underwent a bypass surgery or underwent a stent placement. After that, in a 3 months or 6 months time, we can take ahead the remaining part of it, like the lifestyle modification thing. Because if this thing continues, I mean, the reasons for which the patient landed there, and if we keep continuing the same thing, there's a possibility 5 or 10 years down the line, the patient will again land up with another blockage or some other complications. So yeah, it can happen in any point of time. If it is felt that a surgery or a modern intervention is required, we advise the patient to go ahead with that procedure and after you with the lifestyle modification and preventive things.
So any such very complicated case you might have handled, and it should be a greatest success story of yours. If you can, you have already shared one, but then if you can find out, it was really a challenge for you in your experience, and you have got a great success in the same patient.
So I would say there was a patient, a bit aged patient, somewhere around 70 to 73 years of age, and the patient had a blockage of almost 60 to 70% and was advised surgery, and that was recommended because the patient had other comorbidities, means other diseases as well associated to it. However, the patient was not willing to, go for surgery. The first time the patient approached, I really explained them saying, it's better that we go ahead and do the surgery. And after the recovery phase, we can just take up the rest of the thing, the lifestyle modifications, and there is no, relapse or something. But the patient was really not willing. He wanted to give it a try. So we just connected with his cardiologist as well, saying that maybe we are trying, but in any time if something arises, we need to take up a call and do the surgery and stuff. So we started with the medications, but I sadly the patient, I think, was developed some symptoms. I mean, it was breathless and stuff like that, so need to be admitted and had to underwent a surgery. But yeah, the best part was after the surgery, the success rate was really good. I mean, after the surgery, after 3 months or 6 months, when we started the lifestyle thing, the confidence that the patient gained and the quality of life improved to some extent. I mean, the change in their lifestyle, the exercise pattern, the diet pattern, that helped the patient even in respect to their diabetes values. I mean, the patient was a high diabetic, which diabetes values went down, the HbA1c, which is an indicator for diabetes, came down to somewhere around 5 to 6, and I think the patient is still doing well. Yeah, and is fine. Is still in contact.
So you spoke about HbA1c, and I still remember because when I was diagnosed with a borderline of 7.7, I think I've shared it with you earlier. And with the lifestyle, I could
Yeah,
make it to like yoga and particularly the food, making kitchen as a pharmacy,
correct, correct.
So I could make it to 5.8.
Yeah,
So that was a great I
correct.
would say achievement, because if you are suffering and then you have achieved this, it's an achievement, I would say. So I mean, really great that you could
Absolutely.
yeah. So you are creating that awareness. That's really great to know about this. So and one more thing I would really appreciate when you were talking about that you're working with cardiologists. So that means the allopathy doctors are also integrated with the Ayurvedic doctors, and they're kind of you people are working together now, instead of this versus
Yeah,
that. Instead of this versus that,
correct,
now
correct.
it has been an integrated way of looking at the holistic. It's such a holistic approach of looking at issues and concerns, right?
Correct, correct. So there are cardiologists, as I said, I think we are all of the opinion, it's the patient first. It should be the patient first. Whatever is good for the patient, we should go ahead and do that. And I think
Great.
every pathy should work hand in hand and give their best on plate for the patient. I mean, what could benefit the patient? Yeah, and it's really appreciative. There are doctors which are working together in the cardiac rehab as well as the preventive field to, create the healthcare a bit more advanced and a bit more safer and in a preventive approach.
So now, as you are as you are working into this space of as a preventive cardiologist, so generally a person at what point of time should see a who and when should one see a preventive cardiologist? I mean, suppose we are staying at home, what is that one thing that
Mhm.
one thing you said that we should go for a yearly checkup? That's one thing. Apart that, when should it should click in our mind that okay, we should go and see a preventive cardiologist? Is there something, or symptoms or something of that sort? Or how it is? Or maybe a age, after a certain age? How is it?
So I would say, this preventive checkup, which I said, could be done with your family physician as well. It's not an thing. So the time you should visit a preventive cardiologist is first, as I said, if you have any of the risk factors that we discussed previously, elevated blood pressure, that's hypertension, or any diabetes or overweight, and you start getting some symptoms like, you're feeling tired while walking some distances, or feeling, you have to catch your breath, you're not able to walk long distances, any such cardiac issues, or in your general checkup, if there are this general checkup includes cholesterol reports are high, or if your ECG shows any issues, that is the time you can visit. And talking about age, I would say rather than the age limit, it should be like if you have a cardiac history, any cardiac diseases in your family, your immediate family, like your mother or your father is suffering from a cardiac disease, especially at a younger age. When I say younger age, less than 45 years of age. So I think that children are at a much more higher risk as compared to the other population. So these are the people who should, I think, approach a preventive cardiologist to do the yearly checkups, or maybe if some symptoms are there, or there's this early diagnosis of anything, should work with a preventive cardiologist to see that they don't land up into cardiac diseases or any cardiac events.
Okay. And so one very interesting question to you, Dr. Rima. In this busy schedule and after pandemic, the life has become so very digital, digital lifestyle. So
Correct.
the most ignored space at home is the kitchen. I would say ignored in the sense
Correct.
that we eat anything and everything at any point of time. And I've seen people who just look at the watch and think about, whether I should eat at this moment or not. मतलब घड़ी देखा और अभी से खाना और चलो अभी खा लेते हैं. So it's like, there is no connection between the decision that you make about eating and your signal that should come out from, listening to the signal that is there right within you. So here, tell me how kitchen is interrelated with well-being, and how people should, you know, create that shift, mind shift, to look at this, the most ignored part, or you can say even if we look at the kitchen, then we would think that what all can we make and eat anytime and every all the time. So how kitchen should be looked at, and what kind of perspective, or what kind of, in what way we should look at the kitchen so that it creates well-being for us, and it can also be a part of the preventive measure.
Correct. So when you say kitchen is the most ignored part, I think is the most valuable thing that everyone should like. That as we say, the charity begins at home, the health begins at kitchen. It should go like that. So you correctly said, given the current scenario, everyone is home munching something or the other at every point of time, which is actually causing, weight gains, or people are being overweight, people are working from home, maybe zero physical activity, and eating all the time. So I think firstly, it's a very wrong concept to eat, seeing at the time. So it's all about, you should eat when you're feeling hungry, only then first. And second, you should only eat till a point you feel, your hunger has satisfied. We have a habit to eat, till the time it's up to here, up to our full. So it shouldn't be like that. It should always be like you should eat till the time you just feel your hunger has satisfied. And the next, I would say, you should include more things which have fibers, which can contain, fruits, or while you're eating fruits, I think you eat fruits and you should keep a gap. I mean, there should be a gap of at least 2 hours between meals. I mean, when you have a breakfast and something between the breakfast and the lunch, you should at least have a gap of 2 hours between every meal. And to add to it, if we are saying what should we have in our kitchen, so to add to few of those things, flaxseed, the way we call it, so it is very nice, it has fibers, as well as it helps in weight loss. I mean, that's this one pro tip that I wanted to give people. You can have this flaxseed powder or even the roasted flaxseed at least half an hour before your meal. What happens is it gives you satiety, it gives you a feeling of fullness, and you eat less as compared to what you used to eat and store carbohydrates. So it
Okay.
can be used as a fiber powder. So that's one tip that everyone can follow. It's really healthy, and it can actually help you to give that satiety, as well as salads. Can have
Mhm.
one bowl of salad at lunch as well as in a dinner. I mean, that also give you a fullness, and it is full of fibers that can help.
Okay. And would you like to also talk about, because I've seen people at any posture, they just, they prefer to eat. I mean, I've seen when I was in US, one of my very close friend, so she had invited, and then
Mhm.
we were there. So we were sitting at the dining table, and I prefer sitting on the floor and eat. But then, like, we were sitting in the dining table and we were eating, but he was actually standing and eating. So how does it impact our health? Because मुझे याद है जब मैं छोटी थी, like when I was in a school days, my mom used to say that खड़े होके मत खाओ, असुर के पेट में जाएगा. This kind of डराते थे कि खड़े होके मत खाओ. So does it impact, or one can eat in any posture they like, sitting in the sofa? Yeah. Does it make a difference sitting on the floor, sitting on the sofa, and standing? Because आजकल party में if you see, people just hold it in a just like that, and then they start eating, and they like, and arrangement bhi hota nahi hai, you sit and eat. So how does it
Correct, correct.
impact, how does it impact our health?
So firstly, I would say be in a comfortable position. I mean, enjoy your food. I mean, it's just not like कि जैसे तैसे खा लो and then just leave. So just enjoy your food, be comfortable, and I think I would prefer saying people, you can sit. It can be a dining table, it can be on floor, depending upon the arrangement. But I think uh, sitting and having your food, enjoying your food, just don't gulp it, just chew your food and enjoy your food is the thing I would suggest. uh, because I think when you eat standing, it's firstly it's uncomfortable, and then you don't enjoy your food. That's the point. I mean, there's no point standing and eating. You should be sitting, and that's what is traditionally be followed in those time. I think that's the best thing to do. Let that be on a dining table or on floor. That doesn't make any change.
You spoke about being comfortable. I exactly, I insisted that person, my friend's husband, that why don't you sit and eat? So he said he was comfortable. These days this comfortable thing also has come under this uncomfortable, so they
Very
don't realize.
subjective.
Very
Right, right.
subjective, yes, very subjective.
Yes. Correct. But I think more than the comfort, I mean, the first point was comfort, but more than that as well, you're not, while we are standing, we are not very stable. We are just a bit of instability is there. So I think sitting on a chair or on the floor is the best thing to do.
And as we are discussing about the kitchen, I still remember, like my grandparents, and I've seen other, being in Hyderabad, other grandparents, like family whom I know. So to their granddaughters or grandsons, they make a habit of giving turmeric and neem weekly basis. So how does it, I mean, does it help, or is it good to, because this pandemic time also I've seen, kadha and all that, this green tea with ginger and few things. So is there something,
Correct.
would you like to recommend or maybe suggest to people that just from the kitchen, if they can, what would be those, couple of spices that can be taken on a daily basis, depending on their body type, and also depending on the climate outside and where they are in the location, take into consideration few two
Yeah.
or three spices if they can add to their life in their lifestyle, what would that be?
Yeah, so I would say the one as I suggested, we are people who really want to lose weight or something can go with the fiber powder, which can be prepared by flaxseed. So people who are diabetic as well can add methi seeds to it, which can also help in diabetes. While talking about green tea, people can always make their own herbal teas. I mean, with some ginger, some cinnamon, that's dalchini powder a bit, some pepper like the marich, what we say in Hindi. With that, some methi, if people are diabetic and is willing to have it, they can use all these ingredients together, boil it for 5 to 10 minutes, and can have it as an herbal tea. And that's really helpful. And talking about turmeric, yeah, for kids as well as for adults who are not allergic to milk can have a glass of milk with some turmeric in it. Even that helps. I mean, turmeric gives you and helps you enhance your immunity. And that's the reason, as you said initially, it was given with milk or to people to enhance their immunity. That was the scientific reason behind it.
And if not with milk, can it also be taken? Because I've seen people, there are many tablets and capsules available. When I was in US, I have seen in Walmart. I was really surprised when it was my first visit to Walmart. I was really surprised to see a huge heap of tablets being kept in the exactly in the middle of the aisle, and it was written as turmeric capsules. I said, "Oh my God, these people know, and we Indians we don't realize the importance of that." So,
Exactly.
so without milk, can it be taken?
Exactly, that's the point. Yeah. It can be definitely taken, as I said, that we don't accept it when the things are just lying in our kitchen. So till the time we don't go and buy the tablets for turmeric, we don't understand the importance of the turmeric lying in our kitchen. The same happens with, I think, the flaxseed. If you can see, I think there are companies which are have this flaxseed as a tablet as well and is marketed for weight loss. It's the same flaxseed. You can just have it, the roasted one. Maybe you can powder it or you can have it like that. I mean, it's the same. It's not like you will have to go and buy the tablets and only have it. It's of the same value. You can have it, the things that are lying in your kitchen.
Okay. Okay. So you spoke about this HbA1c for diabetes, Dr. Rima.
Diabetes.
Does methi soaked in water and having it in the morning helps in reducing HbA1c? I mean, just if you can answer this question.
Yeah, it can help to some extent. However, I won't suggest people to, just only be dependent on that. So it will be as a supportive to your medications. And once your HbA1c, starts lowering and comes to a level, then we can go ahead and, lowering your diabetes medication dosage and can have this methi continued. However, there's one point I would say during summer, like now the summers are really bad coming up. So I would say you can have this methi 4 or 5 days a week, not every day, because it has some kind of heat. So some people can some people can have some problems with it. As in Ayurveda, it said, right, Vat, Pitta, and Kaph. So it can elevate your Pitta and can cause acidity to some people. So it is recommended that even if you're starting, at least for the summer seasons, you can have it only 4 or 5 times.
I mean, beautifully said, Dr. Rima. That means all our spices has certain innate qualities that we need to understand. Know when to use and how to use according to the climatic conditions, according to the
Correct.
locations we are into. So I think a lot of studies has to be. I think these things has to be included in the syllabus as well. That would help. From the childhood, kids should understand and take it from there. That's how it can. I don't know, like when government would look into this, but then that also as you are creating awareness, you can take this initiative as well and do something about it. To make it happen in the from the high school onwards and make it as a syllabus to understand these spices. No doubt, Ayurveda would be having the whole syllabus out of it, but a bit of it, something of at least understanding the spices and all that should be in the syllabus of school children, so that from there. I think that would be a huge initiative and can impact a lot and make a difference for sure.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion, which could be looked upon, but I think that would still take time, to get
And
it into the syllabus. So till the time that is done, I'm just trying to, at least I have published a book on diet for people to understand some of the basic things, even with the categorization of their body type. As it said, in Ayurveda, we can classify at least the body types into the Vata, Pitta, and Kapha.
Mhm.
So, according to those types, what are the things that could be taken? What are the things that could be avoided or can be rarely taken, or some sorts like that? And I'm also trying to, have some blogs or something which can help people at least to understand the few basic things about it. Till the time we could actually inculcate in the syllabus or something.
Great. I mean, so do you also consult online these days, Dr. Rima, in this pandemic time?
Yes, I do. I'm also like there are people who have been sending me emails as well, for some email communication, some online consultations if needed. And yeah, I do reply on people some queries as well after my book, as I said. Have
Yeah.
been published. I get emails from many people for their some doubts. These are my medications, or these are things. So, what next to do? What are the things which could be done? So, as much as possible, which can be done online, I surely assist them. And if needed, I would actually suggest them, you can go ahead to your some local Ayurvedic Panchakarma specialist or a doctor, because for some Panchakarma procedures and all that can't be done online. That needs
Right.
to have a Panchakarma specialist in person. So depending upon that, I could surely suggest and assist people.
So great. I mean, in our description list, we would definitely give the link of that book so that our viewers can go through that link and get that book and read it. And also, all the links of how to contact Dr. Rima would also be given in the description box. Now, two last question, Dr. Rima. Uh, is there any ratio of no the neck and the waist and the wrist, because I've seen this in a lot of articles and blogs that there should be a ratio, so which would give you a signal that you are in a good health and shape. Does it really, I mean, is it good to look at it like that in terms of health about this ratio?
Yeah, so basically the worldwide accepted, the WHO recommended ratio is the waist to hip ratio,
Mhm.
which is the waist diameter is calculated around your belly button. What is the diameter sorry, what is the circumference of your waist? And the next, the hip ratio is measured on the buttock region. And the waist to hip ratio is calculated by waist circumference upon the hip circumference, and it should be 0.9 or less for males and 0.8 or less for females, which is considered to be healthy as per even the WHO guidelines. The rest of the things which you said, the neck, the wrist, and stuff, that is somewhere dependent on your height as well as your weight and the rest of the things. But this waist to hip ratio is something which is standardized, as well as the BMI. So the BMI, which is calculated nowadays, we also have apps, right? We can put our height and weight and calculate the BMI online, which should be less than or equal to 24 for a normal body weight,
Yeah, so
which
you
to be
said,
considered as
yeah,
healthy.
you said 0.9, so what is the unit for that?
No, it's the circumference, right? So it's the two circumferences, so the unit gets cancelled, right?
Oh, okay.
So the waist as well as the hip. Yeah.
The ratio. Okay, got it.
So the waist circumference is divided by the hip circumference,
Okay, got it. Yeah,
and that should be 0.9 or less for males and 0.8 or less for females.
got it. The ratio you're talking about, yeah. So, so Dr. Rima,
Yes,
what would
right.
be those three takeaways that you would like to tell our viewers, about that they can really take that step on a daily basis and create the change in their lifestyle for their well-being? What would be those three steps that, or maybe those three things, or that would be a takeaway from this conversation? And people would start, it would be very easy and doable three steps that you can recommend or suggest.
Yes. So I would say the first is in this pandemic time, the first thing that to suggest is at least 30 minutes of physical exercise, maybe walking if possible, or or yoga or any kind of physical exercise that can burn your calories, at least, which is the first thing I would suggest. The next thing I would say is the diet. Try keeping a gap of at least 2 hours between every diet, and inculcate, at least one bowl of salad during your lunch and your dinner. That would really help. And the third and the most important is give your health a priority, and do go for your checkups. It's not that if you go for your checkups only then something will come up. It's
Yeah.
never like that. So give yourself a priority and go on at least a yearly basis for your health checkups.
Okay, so the first
I
one is
think
to go
that's all I
for,
can say.
yeah, the first one is to go for a 30 minutes exercise in the morning. And the second one is to have
Correct.
gap between two meals as per their hungers, having that
Yes.
more than 2 hours or two
Yes.
hours of gap. And the third one is to give health
Correct.
as a priority,
To have
right?
a health priority. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dr. Rima. It was really great, to have such insight about the health and well-being, and it was wonderful, having this conversation with you. And I'm sure our viewers will, once they watch the whole episode, would get a lot of insight about the small nuances and steps that they can take, and consider kitchen as one of the most important aspect of their life, and
Correct.
take into consideration and take that extra step to understand what all are lying in the kitchen about in terms of spices and all that, and understand a bit of they are spending a lot of time watching Netflix and all that, so they can spend a little more time to understand those spices and all that. So it was really a great having a conversation with you, Dr. Rima. And in the description box we will share all the details of Dr. Rima if you want to have a consultation online with her, with her contact details, and also the blog and the name, the link of the book would also be given in the description box. And so thank you, Dr. Rima, and I really appreciate your presence here on Enhanced Life Skill platform.
Thank you for calling me here, and thank you to all the viewers as well. And of course, do remember that prevention is better than cure. So take care of your health and be safe in these challenging times.